Welcome to Just Campers and welcome to our next little project, this 1959 Karmann Ghia. So as you can see, I've got the Karmann Ghia on the ramp. I've removed all the brake drums so we can have a good close inspection of those brakes. And unfortunately, I have found a few problems. So the rear brakes are absolutely covered in gear oil, and that's due to the hub seals both sides failing. I've flung gear all around the inside of the drums, all over the brake shoes, so they're absolutely destroyed. And on the other side, we have a wheel cylinder leaking, so that's adding to the fluid in that side. On the front, they look good on first glance until I peeled back the rubbers on the wheel cylinders and then found that also both front wheel cylinders are leaking. But fortunately, the front brake shoes look in good condition, so we can reuse those. So this is the result of our leaking hub seal, obviously leaking past this seal anyway. And it's flung around the drum. As you can see, the backing plate's quite shiny and covered in oil now. Also, the brake shoes are covered in oil and the drum. So this is one of the rear brake shoes, and as you can see, it's covered in oil. So this is completely contaminated now. No good for a brake shoe lining at all. So we need to replace the rear brake shoes. The rear drums we can give a good clean and a good scrub, and they'll be good to go again. So as I gently tease the rubber back on the front wheel cylinder, oh, there you can see it. There the brake fluid running everywhere. If that was left any longer, that would have flung all around the brake shoes and left them unserviceable. So on draining the rear gear oil, I realised there wasn't an awful lot in there at all. And the colour and condition of it is pretty poor. So gear oil should be that sort of lovely dark golden colour. Check this out, there's nowhere near it. I've put a little tiny drop in this white container here, just so you can see how dirty it was. You see that? Yeah, I'm glad we're changing that. A little brake shoe refitting tip. Fit the top shoe with its securing pin, then fit the springs. So we've got the heavier spring this side, on the wheel cylinder side, and the lighter spring on the adjustment side. Hook the spring into the shoe without dropping the other spring. Hook the shoe on. Okay, now it's floating. What we're going to do, we're going to use the heavy side first, and I'm just going to pull that down into the wheel cylinder, and then we can use that side as leverage to get this side in, which makes life a little bit easier, like so. And then all I need to do is put my securing pin in, job done. So unfortunately, we have hit a slight stumbling block. The spacer which goes between the wheel bearing and the brake drum won't come off the shaft. Now normally they just slide off. They house a little O-ring, so I need to take it off to replace the O-ring. I've tried tapping the face to try and shock the spacer off. I've even tried to chisel down between the wheel bearing and the spacer and gently tapping it. It still won't come off. So my only option next is to try a bit of heat and see if we can expand that spacer and then tap it off. So let's give that a go. So with the application of a little bit of heat, it's actually moved and it should just now let go. There we go, awesome. So now I can get all of that nicely cleaned up to fit our brand new hub seal, and then we can get on with the brakes. First things first, a little bit of magic sealer on the back there where the back plate's going to join. So this gasket sealer I'm putting on is doesn't go off totally hard, it stays fairly soft. So we can get that on there. Now I can get the gasket on. Okay, let's line them up. And a little bit more magic sealer just around where the actual O-ring is going to sit. As I say, this doesn't go off totally hard, this sealer. It stays fairly soft and pliable and sticky actually, so it seals up quite nicely. Now we can put the O-ring on. So we've got our brand new O-ring on the outside. So he goes on. This actually helps to keep everything in place while we're doing the rest of it. Excellent. Now I can put the washer on and then the small O-ring. So we've got the new washer that goes on over the wheel bearing first, and then the new O-ring. Okay, gently not to snag that. Roll that on up to there like so. And then we can fit the part that actually contains the hub seal itself. So as you can see, I've already pressed in the new hub seal from behind because it's shaped so you can actually push it in from behind rather than the sharp edge on the front. I'm just going to put a little bit of brushable seal around the outside of there too. There we go, so just a light coating of that brushable sealer on there too. Now I can slide this up and over and put it into position. And then we can actually get the securing bolts in, so there's 4 of those. Let's pop these in, just to keep everything in place. Let's nip those up to stop everything moving quickly. Okay, so that's gently nipped, keeping everything in position while we get the other 2 bolts in. So that one and that one. He pops in there. And the last one in there. We get those tight. Okay, make sure we tighten these nice and evenly all the way around. And then we can just check to see what torque setting they are, and we can torque them up to the correct setting. And this actually holds the bearing in place onto the axle then. Like so. And then all we need is our new spacer to go back over the top, because remember I had to heat the other one up, so I'm going to go and clean it up and make sure it's good. The spacer goes on, and that's it. That's the hub seal done. So our torque setting for our wheel bearing retaining bolts are actually 43 foot-pounds or 58 newton meters. Again, we just go around nice and evenly until the torque wrench clicks off. Beautiful. I think that's those correctly tightened. And then lastly, we can put our wheel bearing spacer back in. Like so. Job done. So we've got our lovely new rear brake shoes here, as you can see. The old brake shoes obviously have the handbrake lever attached to them. The new ones don't come with this, so you have to remove this clip and then put this original handbrake arm onto your new brake shoes. So now we have our original handbrake lever on our new brake shoe. So we can get these onto the car now. So a quick summary of where we're at with the Karmann Ghia. Front brakes are done. We used the original brake shoes as they cleaned up, brand new wheel cylinders and brand new flexi hoses. I changed the flexi hoses because they were looking pretty old and I couldn't quite see a manufacturing date on them. I do get asked, how often should I change my flexi hoses? And the answer is roughly 6-7 years, something like that. Anything older than 10, you could be pushing your luck. There's normally a date stamp on there from manufacturer, so it gives you an idea of how old they are and when they were fitted. So the new ones I fitted have got a date stamp of 22 actually, so they were made last year. So we know we're good for another 7 years, no problem at all. And let's just go to the back. So as you can see, we've got our brand new brake shoes fitted on the rear, our new hub seals and brand new wheel cylinders. I also changed the rear flexi hoses as the same as the front. I couldn't quite see a manufacturing date, so I didn't really know how old they were. So new flexi hoses all round, we know where we're starting from now. So what's left for me to do is to get the brake drums on, get some adjustment on the shoes, run some brake fluid through and bleed the brakes up. Bleeding brakes on classic cars can be a bit of a pain. So I'm going to go through how I do it, give you a few hints and tips, and hopefully help you out. First things first, make sure you keep that reservoir topped up at all times during your bleeding process. Once our reservoir is full, the first thing I do is use gravity. Gravity is our friend, so I'm going to gravity bleed our brakes first. And what that means is I'm going to crack the nipples open and allow the fluid to flow. It's going to flow through the master cylinder and to our wheel cylinders. This helps to protect the master cylinder during bleeding process because we're making sure that we've got fluid in there and we want to keep those seals wet. Last thing we want to do is start pumping on our master cylinder when we haven't got fluid in there and blow through the seals. I've got a standard bleed bottle here. These normally have like a little valve in the bottom of the pipe. I've removed that for this part of the process. So we pop this straight onto our bleed nipple, the pipe. There he goes. And then we can crack that bleed nipple open. A good sort of full turn. And now we can let gravity draw our fluid through our master cylinder, through our wheel cylinder and into our pipe. Now the clear pipe obviously is what we need so we can see. I can actually see the fluid flowing. And once it's flowing with no bubbles present, I can then shut this nipple off and then move on to the next corner. And I'll go all the way around the car until we come back to here. At this point, I can now check the brake pedal to see if we have any resistance at all. We know we've got fluid in our master cylinder and down to our wheel cylinders. So we should get sort of maybe quarter or half pedal, something like that. If we're still finding that the pedal is hitting the deck with no resistance at all, then we need to repeat our gravity bleed process. I've got good resistance on that brake pedal now, about half pedal. So that's really good. This next part you will need somebody to help you, somebody to sit inside the car and keep applying pressure to that brake pedal. So get your somebody to pump the pedal once, twice and then keep pressure on it. I open the bleed nipple furthest from the master cylinder. I'll give that a quick blast. And fluid flows, the pedal goes down to the deck. You make sure you're certain somebody inside has got their foot on that pedal at all times and they're still down on the deck. Fluids flow, no air, good. Nip it up. The pedal can now come back up. Bring the pedal up, Mark. And we can go and do that process again. And we keep going until we have no air in this side at all. And then we move one step closer to the master cylinder until we're right back at the front. Once we're at the front bleed nipple, closest to the master cylinder, we've got good fluid flow with no air bubbles. We should now have a good firm brake pedal. How's the pedal, Mark? Yeah, good firm pedal. If you still find you have too much travel on your brake pedal, I would then at this point go around and readjust your brake shoes. That should eliminate that extra travel. Let's pop some fresh oil into the gearbox. I've drained the engine oil and I've taken our oil strainer out. Pretty mucky, so I'm going to put a nice brand new one in there with some nice new gaskets. I've cleaned up the face, so we're ready to go. Lovely new oil strainer. Let's pop him on. Bit of a push because he's nice and new. That's sat over the pickup nice. Now we can put the bottom gasket on and the cover. Job done. Now we need is copper washers and the nuts. I refilled the engine with oil and carried out the rest of the engine service, including carrying out a compression test across all 4 cylinders. So there you have it, our 1959 Karmann Ghia, recommissioned and ready for the road.